I'll be honest with you, I messed this one up, but sometimes the journey's actually better than the destination. So, let's turn off this Christmas music and get on with the actual build. I had this grand idea for a sort of Christmas special. I was going to take a classic film and reinvent it in the Warhammer setting. And what better film than that Christmas classic, Die Hard. If you've seen the film Die Hard, you'll know that a group of terrorists take over the Nakatomi Plaza and use it as their base while they try and launder some money. Little did they know that our hero would also be there that night. First job, build the plaza. Well, part of it. One of the rooms at least. One of the main rooms where the action takes place. So far, so good. No real problems. No regret just yet. Using scraps of foam and card I had lying around, I started to assemble the main room. Looking back now, I'm really not too sure why I used a rough textured card for all the doors. I blame the drink. But I'll carry on cutting these shapes out, sticking them down, oblivious to the problems I'm going to cause myself. To achieve a panel effect on these walls and doors, I thought the easiest and quickest way would be to score them in. So that's what I've done, using the blunt end of a file. So, for the first of the bad guys, I decided to use a Space Marine. I've sort of found a quick and easy technique to paint Space Marines now. It mainly involves dry brushing, blocking in some of the larger details, using a few washes, and a bit more dry brushing. It works and it's pretty effective, and the contrast is very nice. I must say, Games Workshop Retributor Gold really is the best. You can of course spend longer on this if you want, but this gives you a good foundation to start from. So if you want to add a few more layers, work on those blends a little bit more, knock yourself out. But for me and the needs of this build, this is just about enough. Quick tip, Reichland Flesh over the gold does all the hard work for you. Just some final dry brushing. With a Space Marine finish, we can continue the build of this room. Within this office, they have a big steel framed glass cubicle, I suppose. So we need to build that using some styrofoam plastic. We can cut this to shape, glue it in place. Whilst we have the glue out, we can add a bit more detail to the windows and add some bullet holes. A bit more scoring on the floor. Still wearing that Christmas hat. And sand off those rough edges. Then add a bit of debris to the actual floor itself, and a bit more of that styrofoam. New day, hat back on, let's get some paint down on these walls. This is where the problem started to arise. All the walls and doors within the building are actually white, so don't offer a great scope for painting. As the paint was going on, I could see that this was going to be a problem. It was just too flat, too white. Even the grey of this frame wasn't probably going to be enough. So let's use a pencil. Let's add a bit of texture. Let's go over these tiles, highlight them a bit more. Hopefully it'll give them a 3D effect and create a bit more interest in this build. This is an iPod box, and I think we can get away with using it as part of the office furniture. Once it's cut to shape and dry fitted, I think it'll work. We've even used part of that box as the office table. No one will ever know, unless you're listening to this and watching this video. Onto the squats. Contrast orange all over. Let's get this slapped on and not hang around. Trying to be slightly tidy and neat where we can, but it's not too much of a problem. We can always tidy it up later. Contrast paint for the backpack. this is just a black. And, like the Space Marine, block in some details. We'll give his domed head a nice shiny finish, and use the same silver on his axe. Now we've got a red wash, and we're going to go around and do a little bit of recess shading in all the recesses. And of course, his butt crack. A nice black wash all over the metallics. And now on some lighter oranges. I use 3 different types here, each one a little bit lighter than the one previous. We're just going to build up the layers, getting lighter each time, covering less area. You can take as long as you want. I probably spent about 20 minutes doing this. And then a bit of final edge highlighting. Once all that's done, and as per all my models, this guy then gets a dry brush. And with the last of the dry brushing, we'll call this one done. That's 2 miniatures finished for this diorama. With a base built, we need to paint it, and again, the problems continued. For the doors I used a really watered down metallic, and it looked pretty rubbish, but I carried on. With the walls and floors, everything gets a dirty dry brush, trying to grime it up a little bit and make it look like it's been in some sort of gunfight. The floor's still not quite working, so we're going to accentuate these tiles with a black marker pen. Using my trusty pencil, we're going to do the same to the wall tiles. It's starting to look okay now, but it's not really the vision I had in my head. But we'll soldier on. So, painting a bit more detail on the floor, some debris from the fight that's taken place. And I wasn't happy with these doors. The silver just looked rubbish. So I've masked them all off and I'm going to give them a good coat of grey. You can peel this away and see what we're left with. Let's tackle a third and final miniature. I chose this because I could paint them green, and my thinking was I would have 3 miniatures of different varying contrasting colours. Again, we'll block in the details, giving everything a nice solid and quite tidy base coat. You may wonder why I'm using a limited palette here. The main reason? Well, I'm pretty lazy. Once the base coat's done and dry, we'll use Reikland Flesh Shade and again do a bit of recess shading. The eyes are tiny, so we can probably get away with just putting some shade in them. With the shadow of the brim of his helmet, you'll never really notice. As per the squat, but this time using green, we'll use some lighter shades and pick out the raised areas. I wanted to add a bit more contrast, so I've gone over the original green with a darker green here, just to highlight some of the details, his shoulder pads and knee pads, I suppose the metallic areas. A very light green for some edge highlighting. And let's pick out a few more of the raised areas on his face with a lighter flesh tone. Do the same for the backpack. Some final details, like the Space Marine or the Votan, you can really take as long as you want on this. And I think we can call this guy done. So the office party itself, we're not a million miles away now, we've got all the various elements. So let's weather and distress these again with a dry brush, using metallic this time. And the doors, trying to salvage these. Sort of clutching at straws now, so let's give it a black wash. What's the worst that can happen? For the window, I'm just using a bit of old food packaging. I'll glue that in place. And then add some transfer details to the office equipment. We can black in the window with some card. And then move on to the broken glass. A bit of plastic from a frame. We're going to cut this up and fix it all in place. This is meant to represent broken glass. In truth, it's probably a little bit thick for it to be in scale with the actual miniatures, but it'll do. With the hat still on, we can do a rough assembly of this and see how everything's looking. Using PVA because it dries clear, we'll add some more glass around the table. Of course, every Christmas film needs a hero, and in this case, it's Bruce Willis. Being a metal miniature, it hasn't got a great deal of detail, so this is pretty easy to paint. As usual, block in the details. Get all these in place and nice and neat. Any paint that overlaps, we can tidy up. Looks a bit more like Elvis from this angle. Elvis with a machine gun, maybe. Keeping in a Christmas spirit, look at that t-shirt. Another good Christmas film. Maybe a build for next year. With all the base coats dry, we'll use some lighter shades and pick out the details on his muscles. I'm sure Bruce Willis wasn't this muscly. All that's left now is to put Bruce Willis in place. Add some blood on his feet, you'll know why if you've seen the film. And I suppose I can't really put it off any longer. Let's take a look at the final reveal.